Who the hell are you?
What are you?
What the is this?
Movie.
Guy.
Welcome to the Movie TV Guy podcast. I want to thank you for tuning in, and I want to do what we always do and get straight into the show. So first, let's talk about the numbers, and let's talk about an update on Avengers Endgame's battle to be the highest grossing movie ever. As we talked about last week, Avengers was re-released, and they added about 6 minutes of footage on the end. So, did it come off with these big results that they wanted? Are they the number one movie ever already? No. Endgame made another $5.5 million this weekend, but it is still, at the best estimate, $26 million short, even with the re-release. And it's like I said, I think the re-release was not a bad idea, but they really didn't add enough incentive to make people want to go. I think there's a little poster they're handing out, 6 minutes of footage at the end, which part of the 6 minutes is just a trailer for Spider-Man Far From Home, which you could watch on YouTube right now or see in the theaters ahead of Endgame probably by this point anyway. It would have been more interesting if they released Endgame and attached to it, people were excited to see Michael Pena scared from Ant-Man recap the entire MCU. That could have been cool. Or something along the lines of combining Infinity War and Endgame into one movie with an intermission. That could have been cool. Or maybe just waiting a couple months to do this. Maybe do this right around Christmas time or something like that. When you consider that Endgame had almost never left the theaters, it wasn't going to make crazy money from a re-release anyway. I still think it's going to struggle to make the $26 million it needs to catch all the way up to Avatar. But enough about that. On to the weekend's results. Toy Story 4 takes the second weekend in a row, and worldwide now is already up to $496 million. So I think Toy Story 4 is going to keep going strong. It's probably going to finish in second place next weekend, just to Spider-Man Far From Home. I still feel like none of this is surprising. I know some people, I was surprised to see, said that Toy Story 4's opening weekend of $118 million, I believe it was disappointing. And where have we come to when a $100 million opening weekend is a disappointment? I know that they attracted to maybe be in the higher range than that, but that's a good opening weekend for any movie nowadays. And the second weekend to have dropped off, not a crazy amount, still make $57 million more, and they've already recouped everything they spent on this movie. I think they're going to be fine. Coming in second, the third Annabelle movie, and this is the seventh movie in the Conjuring universe already. And they've already got plans for another Conjuring movie, The Conjuring 3, next year. So this thing keeps chugging along. It's Annabelle Comes Home. I actually saw this one, and we're going to talk about it more later. The numbers haven't officially been released for the budget, but the first had a budget of a little over $6 million, and the second had $15 million. So to assume that the budget's going to go up a little bit more, 20 to 25 seems to be a reasonable guess. Now, Annabelle only made about $20.3 million. But when you combine that with the foreign and you get the worldwide gross of $76 million on a movie that we're assuming has a $20 to $25 million budget, this is already making money. And I've said it before, this is why studios will always appreciate horror. They are these low-risk movies that they can churn out for low cost and gross high profits. Finally, in third place is Yesterday, the movie where everyone but Jack has forgotten about the Beatles, which is an interesting concept. It's a cute idea. Made $17 million in its opening weekend, $24 million worldwide. What shocks me is that this movie had a budget of $26 million. So somehow Yesterday, the little indie flick about the world forgetting the music of the Beatles, cost more to make than Annabelle Comes Home. And I thought that was very strange considering you look at the commercials for Annabelle and you've got what I assume are, you've got stunts, you've got some special effects, even practical effects cost money. Yesterday it seems like it's just point and shoot, and these aren't big name actors in Yesterday. Nonetheless, Yesterday, more expensive, made less. Not what you want to do, but even that seems like a fine start for this movie. I don't think it's going to go on to be a big smash hit or anything like that. It'll probably make back the money. Nobody's going to lose anything because of it. So let's get on to some news.
It's time for news.
First, because I just want to get out of the way, the Charlie's Angels reboot trailer came out. The new Angels, played by Kristen Stewart, Ella Balinska, and Naomi Scott, are working with Bosley, who's played by the director of the film, Elizabeth Banks, on a dangerous international mission. Charlie's Angels was a funny movie, and I liked it in my childhood, the early 2000s ones, and I think that was a nice spot for these movies. This seems like it's a more serious take on it, which seems a little ridiculous, because this is a old TV show that it's about these female secret agent team that has a boss that they never see, I don't think it's meant to be taken that seriously. And it seems like they're trying to make Charlie's Angels into James Bond, and I don't think it works. This trailer doesn't make any of the angels seem very appealing, because I feel like we barely hear them speak in it even. So they don't really seem to have any personality yet. Obviously, the movie is still months away, doesn't come out until November 15th, and more trailers could show more of the new cast, but for now, I'm not interested. Now on to some news that was big to me that I was interested in. Sadly, Netflix is going to lose The Office in 2021.
Everybody stay calm! What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm!
The Office, which it was recently revealed is Netflix's most popular program, which is pretty crazy since the show's been over since 2013, is going to be taken off of Netflix, and it's basically just bad news for everyone. NBC Universal, who bought it for their app that's going to come out eventually, had to pay $500 million to get the streaming rights to the show, which just barely beat out Netflix's bid for $480 million. So with that $500 million, NBC Universal gets the rights to the show for 5 years. I'm not sure if this is what you're thinking, but what I was thinking was, why did NBC Universal have to buy a show that aired on NBC? I thought if the contract expires with Netflix, don't they just get to take the show back? Apparently it's because The Office was made by Universal Television, which is a different division than NBC Universal. And also it's made by other production companies, in this case Deedle D Productions and Reveal Productions. With the rights expiring after 2020, Universal Television had also met with Hulu and Amazon to discuss those streamers getting the rights, and it basically turned it into an auction. Netflix offered $90 million a year for 5 years, NBC Universal offered $100 million a year. Supposedly NBC Universal is going to be a free app, so you'll still be able to watch The Office, but unfortunately, where you see those breaks in Netflix and the show just comes back, there will be ads there again. In this age of streaming, it's an awful tragedy to have to watch ads again. Speaking of awful tragedy, spoiler warning, the new Black Widow movie, which will obviously have to be a prequel, because she's dead. From Endgame, she died. But the new Black Widow movie had some photos come out from the set, and it appears that we know who the villain will be. It's a character from the comics known as Taskmaster. Now, I like comic books, but I still didn't know that much about Taskmaster, but it turns out he's a mercenary with photographic reflexes. What the hell are photographic reflexes? It means he can mimic the physical movements of any person he sees. He can mimic the karate skills of Daredevil and Iron Fist, the accuracy of Hawkeye and Captain America. You get the idea. Taskmaster can end up copying Black Widow and doing that flippy leg takedown that she's known for. Speaking of Avengers, Ant-Man, Paul Rudd, is joining Ghostbusters 2020. And there's a rumor that Carrie Coon, who was previously in Infinity War, and Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things are also going to join. The move has me feeling nothing, honestly. I liked the original Ghostbusters, but I tend to think it's a bit overrated. You just had the female reboot, and that went over pretty poorly. The movie only grossed $229 million on a $144 million budget. And now you want to make a sequel that brings back the original cast when, sadly, Harold Ramis passed away 5 years ago by this point. Ghostbusters 2 came out in 1989. That's already 30 years ago. I think the time for a sequel has passed, honestly, and we should simply continue enjoying the first two movies. I think that this is likely to have a big opening weekend if it doesn't end up getting very poor reviews first, and then drop off quickly when the word of mouth spreads that it's disappointing and their favorite characters from their childhood nostalgic film look too damn old. Another smooth transition, speaking of Ghostbusters, Melissa McCarthy, who was in that big female reboot that wasn't so big, is joining the next Disney live-action adaptation for The Little Mermaid. She's going to be the new Ursula, which, to be honest, I don't love the choice. Ursula, if I recall, is not a funny villain. She's more domineering and powerful and intimidating. I also feel like a slightly deeper voice would have been better. My personal choice at first when I heard about it was I thought of Queen Latifah. I think she's got that deeper voice and she's a bit less nasally than Melissa McCarthy. Melissa McCarthy, I think, is well equipped for some Disney live-action adaptation, but I don't really see her as a villain. The other choice that I heard about recently that was more of the fan choice was the musician Lizzo. You know her from those songs Juice, Truth Hurts, and I think that would have been a cool choice too. Obviously, these are still musicals and they still require a lot of musical talent, and I've never heard from Melissa McCarthy any musical talent. So I'll be surprised, maybe she brings it, but we'll have to wait and see. On to another Disney live-action adaptation. Tracking was released for the new Lion King film, which is coming out a couple weeks from now, July 19th, and they believe the movie could open to an enormous $150 million. The cast of this is stacked with Donald Glover, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Billy Eichner, Seth Rogen, James Earl Jones, Keegan-Michael Key, John Oliver, and freaking Beyonce. This is also arguably the most popular Disney film of the last 30 years. If Aladdin, which had bad trailers, didn't look good, that's made over $800 million, I think this film will easily make $1 billion. My one complaint is I still don't know how this can be considered live action when it's an entirely CGI film. There's no people in the movie, they didn't film actual animals, so maybe they just left a camera on a tripod in front of some actual landscapes and CGI'd camera movements and animals in, but this seems like a more advanced animation movie to me. Long story short, this movie's going to make a ton of money. When I think Lion King, I think 90s, and when I think of 90s, I think of Seinfeld. This fall in New York City, the Seinfeld Experience is opening to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the show's debut. The show was shot on a soundstage and never actually filmed anything in New York, but New York City was very much a part of the show and a part of Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer's lifestyles. It's going to have plenty of Seinfeld merch, along with behind the scenes of the show. You can walk through a recreation of Jerry's apartment and other sets and see some of the famous costumes and props, like the puffy shirt, the Kramer painting, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more. If you're a big fan of Seinfeld, I know plenty of people who still are even now, this is definitely going to be pretty cool. Now, one more piece of movie news. The summer blockbuster season is seemingly expanding further and further. It's becoming more and more difficult for smaller budget movies and mid-budget movies to break through and become hits with big audiences, because people know they're going to go see the 3 Marvel movies that are coming out this year, or 2 Marvel movies and Fast and the Furious. People already know at the beginning of the year the movies they're going to end up seeing. AMC is trying to change that. The movie theaters want you to see more movies, so the biggest chain is launching AMC Artisan Films, which is going to begin marketing smaller and more independent films. This seems beneficial for theaters and for audiences. They want to get higher quality, more niche films into theaters that hopefully are good, that you want to see once you've actually heard about them. In the words of the Hulk, I see this as an absolute win. And now for the 4th week in a row, let's talk Stranger Things. They put one more cool teaser talking about the fair, and I think they only put this out on Twitter. I didn't see it on actually YouTube at all. Once again, they make sure to mention the mall, the Starcourt Mall, the Upside Down, and they even managed to slide the title into the 80s style commercial. We get to see Mary Klein, who's played by Carrie Elwes, who you'll remember as Wesley from The Princess Bride, and he was the boyfriend in Liar Liar. I'm still so looking forward to this. I've been catching up on seasons 1 and 2 again. I'm definitely going to be talking about season 3 next week because I'm probably going to binge the entire show by then, and I'll let you know what I thought of the episodes. Now let's move on to the second segment of the show. Normally this is where I recommend a YouTuber, but this week we saw a movie. Let's talk about Annabelle Comes Home, which I saw in theaters. First off, don't get deceived by the trailers. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, the actual Warrens, Ed and Lorraine, are hardly in this movie. They're really just the framing device. They're in the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes. It's one of those movies where the best comparison I can give it is there's a thing in television called a bottle episode. The best example I can think of is in Breaking Bad, the episode with the fly, and the entire time they're just trying to get rid of the fly and get the contagion out of the lab. A lot of the time you have a bottle episode because it's cheap and everything's in one location. And this feels like the film equivalent of it. They wanted to put another movie out in the Conjuring universe and they said, what can we do? Well, for almost no money we can have these 3 child actors and they're just going to be running around the house trying to avoid all of these demons, and the whole movie really takes place in the house. A lot of the movie is exactly what you would expect to be. There are so many jump scares, and the jump scares always get me, so I still found the movie scary, but it is not a lot of huge tension building. You can really see it coming from a mile away most of the time. The kid actresses, for the most part, do a very good job, especially the actress who plays the Warren's daughter, McKenna Grace. She's really good as Judy. It's really 3 people are the stars of this movie. McKenna Grace as Judy Warren, Madison Iseman as Mary Ellen, and Katie Sarif as Daniela. Slight spoilers, this whole movie really only exists from a writing standpoint because Daniela is an absolute buffoon. This is a spoiler, but I don't think it'll ruin the movie for you to know this. Daniela's character has lost her father, and that is her motivation for trying to get into the Warrens' creepy artifact room. She really wants to see if she can find a way to communicate with her dad from beyond the grave. Now, I think this is the first thing we should learn about Danielle in the movie. I feel like from a screenwriting standpoint, it really would have helped if I had known that going in, because the movie is really propelled, and the events of the movie are really propelled by Daniela literally doing everything wrong. Because we don't know about her father, and we don't know about that motivation going into it, she just seems like the dumbest character in the world, and you hate her for it. I'm sitting in the theater looking at the person next to me going, oh my god, are you kidding me that she's doing this? Oh my god, are you kidding me? I was almost rooting for her to get killed, which I won't say if she does or doesn't. There's also a character named Bob who plays the love interest for Mary Ellen, and the guy playing Bob is fine, but it feels like it's a different movie. Whenever we see this guy, he is separated from them and he's supposedly interacting with them, but it seems like they had shot everything they had, realized that this wasn't going to be long enough or something like that, and they said, you know what, let's pad the runtime, let's get some more of that stuff with this character. So you get to see a couple of scenes of him just by himself that are just thrown in there. Still, the practical effects are great. It does a good job getting you with those jump scares. Overall, I'd say if you're a fan of horror movies, if you're a fan of these Conjuring type movies, if you enjoyed Annabelle Creation, if you enjoyed The Nun, I would say that this isn't as good as, say, The Conjuring 2, or Annabelle Creation, but I still thought it was better, certainly, than, say, The Nun. It's fun. You're not going to get out of it a great horror experience. You're going to get out of it a decently fun time, and you'll get jarred by a couple of jump scares. If you're into that, I'd say go see it. If not, you can skip this one. And that is going to do it. That is our show for this week. I really want to thank everybody who listens to these. If you've made it to this point, I thank you for listening for this long. If you can go ahead and share this, get this in front of more people's eyes, that would be amazing. If you can leave some comments about what you want me to talk about in the next week, I will certainly get back to you. I will certainly talk about those things. Leave a like. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.